Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Sherman Wealth Wisdom with Brad Sherman and Ashley. Ashley, how you doing this morning?
I'm great. How's it going on your end?
Good, good. Hard to believe it's a week from Thanksgiving. The weeks and days and months are flying fast.
Crazy.
In December, last month of the year, what are we providing wisdom of today? We saw a lot of very interesting stories in the snaps over the last few days. One being our credit blog, which I think is really important, especially for young professionals. We found this article from our friends at Expedia that the average credit score for 40-year-olds was pretty low, 673, which is actually opposite of what we've been talking about and seeing as credit inflation and credit scores are actually becoming higher. So we want to reiterate what we've always been talking about, that credit is really the lifeblood of everything that we're doing. It really helps out on interest rates, on student loan debt if you have. Of course, as you buy a home, getting the lowest interest rate possible is obviously huge, and having low scores, Fannie and Freddie Mac and the lenders are going to penalize you for low scores. So what are some good tips that you've read in the article or wrote in the blog about ways that people can, improve their score?
Yeah, and another point to that was that there was really interesting generational discrepancies between credit scores. So definitely take a look at that, because it's really interesting to see the difference between Gen X, Gen Y, and so on. But some of the tips that I saw were making sure that your credit card utilization is low, paying your bills on time. And even if you can't afford to pay down the full bill, just at least pay the minimum. That's really important, just to keep your credit score stable and you look reliable to creditors and lenders.
On the utilization, always good to ask the lenders for more credit. Not to say that you should utilize more credit, but based on what Ashley's saying, if you have low credit limit, as we've talked about a bunch of times, as you're doing your holiday shopping, apply for credit at the Best Buys and Targets of the world to establish the trade lines. And if they start you off at $500 or $1,000, as you get more comfortable and you build the credit, give them a call, see if they'll raise the credit limit. Again, not suggesting that you should be using more credit, but it's a good way to help with that credit utilization factor, because they want you to make sure that you're not maxing out your card. So that's what that means. Getting into the markets, really crazy, hard to see on paper what really happened. We talked in our video 2 weeks ago how once the vaccine news hit, that these epicenter stocks or reopening kind of stocks shift from traditional growth, work from home type companies into value oriented, which is a real positive strength of a bull market, which is called sector rotation. We saw tremendous rotation in November. As you mentioned, the Russell 2000, which is a measure of small companies in the United States, had their best month ever. I mean, ever is a very long time. And the Dow and the other indices were tracking their best month since 1987. I don't know what else to say other than we've been pounding the table on it for quite some time. When we saw the sell-off in October, and then people were freaking out about an election. You can't time these things. This is one of the books behind us is A Random Walk Down Wall Street, which I know that you quoted in one of the recent blog posts about behavioral finance, and it really proves that this has been a random walk down Wall Street. And from March to now, 9 months of COVID, people screaming on TV that we're all going to die, and the markets are, resilient, and there's a disconnect, unfortunately, as we know, between Wall Street and Main Street. That's what a lot of people's complaints are, which we agree with. We've been talking about the need for second stimulus. You're out of gifts on the snaps. It's been so long in terms of how long this has been dragging. But it shows that you need to stick with your plan. It's impossible to time the market. For everyone who wanted to wait to invest until COVID headlines dissipated from March. You see what happens when you wait for headlines to drive investment decisions. And, as we get to the end of the year, and we want to reiterate all of our end of the year tips, which would be to fund your HSA, fund your IRAs, fund the 529 accounts for your children or grandchildren. And then, of course, look into the Roth conversion if you're eligible for that. And then, of course, making sure that you're topping off 401ks if that's something that you have a benefit of. But with all those things, these should be very long-term investments. We've talked about bucketing as a strategy, which I know that you've been trying to utilize for yourself as you've been getting, checks and working on your budget and savings and the wants versus needs.
Agreed. And another thing that we saw that I know you wanted to bring light to, Brad, was the Zappos CEO passed away and his family believed that he did so without a will. And so we always talk about the importance of establishing a will and making sure that you're set up for a lot of these unexpected events that may occur in life. So Brad, do you want to bring light to that at all?
Yeah, we had this wonderful give back to the community a few weeks ago, this Not Your Grandmother's Estates and Trust and Financial Planning. And we were fortunate enough to be a keynote speaker with Marcy Brecker. And, she brought up and we brought up during that it's never too early to plan for your death, as crazy as that is to say. We saw a huge spike in this as COVID began. A lot of people are redoing their wills. A lot of people are doing estate planning based on taxes and other things to set their children and estate up for future success. So, look, a really fortunate loss. He was a real visionary, and we saw this with Chadwick Boseman earlier in the year in terms of him not having a will. And you're never invincible, and you should never leave what you want to happen to chance. For people that don't have a lot of assets, it's very simple to get, a simple estate signed up. So don't think that it's, too expensive or too overwhelming. Going back to the grandmother's estate, if you are charitable in nature and would like, your IRAs or 401ks or other things to go to someone other than your heirs, or a piece of it to someone your heirs, to a charity or legacy planning, a will is a perfect place for that. The reality is that, through the accounts, they'll transfer on death, but you really don't want to leave, all this to your family to deal with after you're deceased. They would have enough going on. So it's really good to just map this all out, get it down in writing, talk to an attorney, and make it happen. You don't want to leave these things to chance, and you certainly don't want the money that you've built up to go anywhere else. And it's just surprising to me that another young, very well off, person didn't, at least from the story, it's early and we'll see what really comes out, but that this didn't get done. And so feel awful for the family as it stood, given that they lost their husband and father at such a young age. And then, adding on this layer of uncertainty is just not a great look. We've had some people come to us that have been affected in this way, and it really affects everything. So, if we'll add to the end of the year must is review wills, advanced medical directives, and powers of attorney at a basic level, especially in a COVID world, where you might not be able to, tell what you need. If you, God forbid, you're in the hospital and you need something executed, got to have these documents in hand. So let's end on something other than death, but what should we give to the viewers in terms of what they can expect for the rest of the week from the Sherman Wealth team?
Yeah, well, as always, subscribe to our daily snaps. We have daily as well as weekly Friday afternoon snaps, which just kind of our team curates the best and the most interesting stories that we're seeing, and we do our best to deliver something fun and different and a reliable news source. So always subscribe to that. Check out the rest of our videos, our blogs, all of our social channels are great. We're in the process of redoing our website, so keep an eye out for that. And as always, if you need anything, reach out to us, info@Sherman Wealth, and we'll be happy, or schedule a complimentary 30-minute consultation on our site. And we'll see you next time.